I'd like to call the general plan working group to order for Thursday, March 7th, 2024. Can the city clerk please take roll call?
None. Board Committee Member Okamura,
Here.
Committee Member Donnelly,
Here.
Committee Member Holtzlander,
Here.
Committee Member Adamson. Here. Committee Member Darden,
Here.
Vice Chair Hetchman. Here. Chair Stanish.
Here.
Alternate Member Dolk,
Here.
Alternate Member Duke. Here.
Can you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next is public comment. Anyone that would like to comment on anything that isn't on the agenda can speak for 5 minutes. So come up to the podium. All right, nobody here wants to do that. Anybody online?
There are none online.
Okay, I'll close public comment. Then we're on to action items. 3.1, approval of the minutes of February 8th, 2024. Anybody have any comments or questions? Do we hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay,
Hold on for just 1 minute. Just to confirm, motion maker Darden, second, it would be Vice Chair Hetchman. Okay, thank you.
all right, now discussion items. 4.1, draft economic development element. Paul, you're up.
Thanks, sir. Good evening. This is our 23rd meeting as a group, and we are looking at the final element of the general plan, the last element that you've not yet reviewed or commented on. So this evening, next slide, we have the one item reviewing the economic development element. We do want to talk about next steps, which really are getting ready to move towards adoption, and then we'll close the meeting out. So expect this will be a relatively short meeting this evening. Next slide. Next slide. So as mentioned, this is the last element that the working group has not yet reviewed. Economic development is one of those key issues that we've heard of over and over. It's clearly described in the existing general plan from 20 years ago. Many of the same challenges that we're looking at today were in place then. And so this is really not a required element, but a very important element for Rio Vista. That's why you have this optional element in the general plan. This element looks at the connection between land uses, economic activities, the dedication of staff that's required. We are also trying to address to some extent what California Forever means in terms of economic development, because it could have both positive and negative impacts on the city. So we have attempted to address that within the element. Next slide. At the same time that we've been preparing this element, the city clerk and others in City Hall have been developing the economic development strategic plan. This went to City Council on Tuesday night and was approved. We've been looking at the strategic plan early drafts and comparing them to the economic development element. We've strived to have consistency between and reflect what's we're attempting to do with the strategic plan in this element. So hopefully we've been capturing those big themes. Council did have a couple of comments, relatively minor, on Tuesday night. One was there's 2 key businesses that they wanted called out, and so those will be added to the strategic plan. We don't really get into calling out a lot of individual businesses in the element, so that's not as relevant to the element. But we did hear, and we knew that the school district was very important in economic development, but we always were looking at it from a trained workforce perspective, school district programs that could support economic activities and possibly leading into vocational training. So there's really a very important nexus of the school district, but what we heard from the council is the athletic programs swim meets, soccer games, ball games are an important attractant. So people come and visit the community and that generates economic activity. So that's not yet reflected in the element. It was just brought to everyone's attention on Tuesday. So that will get woven into this element, either as a program or as a policy statement. Next slide. So as we've done with the other elements, I'm going to walk through the goals, policies, and programs, and probably best to just address these slide by slide instead of holding your questions. So if at any point you have comments, questions on any of the goals, policies, and programs, once we get through that, anyone who has comments on the body of the element, we want to hear those as well. We've distilled down to 3 goals for the economic development element: a vibrant community that attracts visitors, serves visitors, residents, and businesses, a business climate that really promotes growth of businesses and attraction of businesses, and then increasing employment and various strategies to go about increasing employment opportunities within the community. So that, we think, really kind of encompasses the heart of economic development. A place that people want to visit, a place where businesses can grow and expand, and a place where we have a trained workforce. Are we missing anything in the goals? Okay. Didn't see anything. All right, we're going to move on. Next slide. So now we are into the policies. We'll go through all the policies and then we'll go through all of the implementation programs. First policy is pursue economic development growth through actions that are responsible, steady, and continuous. And this really speaks to the fact that economic development doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take a long-term commitment. It's going to take a coordinated effort, and really over time, economic development can grow and pick up speed, but it's not an overnight short-term solution. Actively support and encourage growth of existing local businesses. Oftentimes, the easiest wins are building on what you already have. So it's great to attract new businesses, but let's make sure that we support our existing businesses. Actively promote establishment and expansion of commercial businesses. Increase local spending and provide goods and services. And this is speaking to the fact that a lot of our residents shopping is happening outside of Rio Vista. And that's not good for us from a revenue perspective, but it's also not good for our residents. They're having to go to Suisun City, Fairfield, somewhere else to get some of their goods. So we want them to be able to make those purchases locally. Any thoughts on these?
Yes.
Sir.
That last one, I'm looking at a different future, I guess, because I see online shopping is one where it's going to continue to grow dramatically. If you go out and look at all the distribution centers that are currently being built in the Central Valley, online shopping is going to really take off, because it doesn't matter where you are or how far you are away from a store, you can go online and order it. And I think that we need to focus on helping our residents do their online shopping. We can improve our sales tax revenues if we can convince people, don't go to Walmart, go to Walmart online and have them deliver it to you. You know, just simple things like that will take the sales tax revenue and bring it back to us.
So because of the way taxation laws have changed,
Right.
Point of purchase matters.
If you buy, the sales tax comes back to the community. If it is delivered here and you live here, sales tax is coming back to the community one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Lisa.
Okay.
Yes. But people,
There
people
are
online
folks online.
won't be able to.
If everybody can kindly speak to the microphone.
So we'll add a program in to address the option of online shopping, the fact that it's here and that it can be a benefit. Okay. Okay,
What is it intended, from responsible, steady and continuous? What does steady mean?
well, I think steady and continuous are similar in meaning, but just
So we-
sustained. You know, we're not gonna sprint.
Okay,
For
that's
6
very
months.
different than I would like to strike then as steady and put sustained, and I think you also need to be creative. I mean, what Art just mentioned, that's a creative solution.
Okay, so that's ED one. So strike, steady,
Or say that I liked sustained, that felt good, but also creative. I don't know if you need sustained and continuous. Continuous seems to mean to me that it is kind of a steady drumbeat and sustained. But I do think you need creative in there.
so sustained and creative.
Great.
Great. Anything else on the slide? Okay, next slide. Actively support and encourage hotels to locate in Rio Vista. So we're talking full service conference, bed and breakfast. This is one we've heard over and over that there's not enough places to stay in Rio Vista and there's not a range of places to stay in Rio Vista. Partner with other agencies and organizations to achieve economic development. And the next one, 6, pursue economic development at local, regional, state, and federal level. We are not alone. We have the Solano Economic Development Council
Corporation.
that we can work with. And we now have our own strategic plan to guide our efforts. So the idea is that we are operating in a much bigger system and we should be aware of that. Any thoughts on these ones?
Yes.
Which one?
I think we've got to decide what market are we going after? Are we going after the recreation market, the tourist market? If we're going after them, then we need to be leaning heavily on our partners across the river in Ileton and Walnut Grove and all of the Delta. We could be get hotels here and highlight the Delta and all the Delta has to offer, all the waterways and everything. If that is where we see us, if that is where we want to go, if that's how we want to brand ourselves as a tourist attraction, as a recreational spot, like a hub of recreation, then we need to really play up the Delta and our partnership should be with our neighbors across the river.
Okay, there was a lot in that comment.
Thank you.
First of all, I think that it is clear that tourism and visitation is part of the whole strategy, absolutely. And in that sense, the location on the river is our greatest asset. So all of that is woven into the element. I don't think there is that final piece of recognizing that our neighbors across the river can be part of our success. So is that?
Yeah, well, see, you mentioned in policy number 6 there, local, regional, state, and federal, and certainly I am concerned that we focus on that we're part of Solano County. And I think if we're going to be attracting people, if we want people to go out of their way to come here and visit us, we have to give them a lot to visit, and the Delta certainly can do that.
Okay, so the general message I'm hearing is if tourism is our goal, we need to be working with other attractants, other agencies, other communities.
Right.
And together we can be more than one city alone.
Correct.
Okay, let me work on how to bring that in. And I'm gonna trust that Nick just wrote that down, so I don't have to.
I know there are
Thank you,
times
Nick.
when it seems like we're more a part of Sacramento County than we are Solano. It just, you kind of get that feeling sometimes. At least I do.
I don't,
No, I do.
and I live in
So it's-
Sacramento County.
Yeah. I don't know, just
you-
being on, like you say, you own the river and then you got the other little towns over there that we associate with. So,
You guys are stumbling on like one of the biggest growing pains our city has had because so growing up here, we were always a Sacramento Delta community. And if you ever mentioned that we were anywhere related to the Bay Area, you would have been laughed out of the room. But when in the last 20 years, when we started to grow and houses need to be sold and housing values need to be raised, it was determined we better be called an East Bay community to raise housing values and attract some of the Bay Area people out here. And that sold houses, but then also like what Art was saying, from a tourist standpoint, more of the Delta image is going to attract that. So it's kind of a growing pain. Are we trying to sell houses or attract tourism? And they both kind of conflict a little bit. So
And that-
solve that for us, Paul.
Well, fortunately, you have a branding effort that will be taking off that will solve all of that, so. All right, so we've got the concept of working with the broader Delta for tourism. Anything else on this one? Okay, next slide. Economic, encourage and support efforts of the school district to increase investment in vocational academic school programs and facilities. So at the outset, I mentioned that we have been looking at this from a trained workforce perspective, working with the school district. We will now add in this concept of working with the school district, and that probably will eventually lead to us developing some city recreational sports fields that would be able to support the leagues coming and playing here. So I think that that's how that will play out, because it was specifically mentioned that the swimming pool is viewed as a real attractant, but some of our other sports fields aren't viewed as being of the same caliber today. Pursue economic development across all types of businesses. You know, the message here is we don't want to be one trick pony. Yes, tourism is part of it, but we also have a business park, and we have construction related industries, construction and grading related. So there's more aspects than just any one of those. And that's good because it makes us more resilient as the economy changes. Support and encourage public-private partnerships for strategic projects. So while no longer proceeding, it seems, there was the Delta Science Center, which would have been a public-private partnership, which could have really done some neat things for Rio Vista, and maybe that will come back around, but that's a kind of an example of what could be a public-private partnership. Possibly development of the waterfront south, the south waterfront property could be a public-private partnership where, you know, the city has the land, but we don't necessarily have the wherewithal to get all of the infrastructure there. So those are examples of public-private partnership. Thoughts on these three policies?
I have one on policy 8. There's a word in there missing for me, and it's restaurants. I don't necessarily always associate commercial with restaurants, but retail is kind of going by the wayside, as Art kind of said earlier, but restaurants seem to be popping up, and I think we need to obviously show that restaurants are part of this economic development pursuit.
And I was going to add nonprofits that serve a particular segment of. So I don't know how you get a nonprofit such as the food pantry that serves a segment of the population here so that they can turn and spend dollars in retail businesses here. I don't know how you add that.
Would that be,
would you see that? I think, while you were talking about policy number 8, Lisa, were you talking about policy 9, do you think?
I would think so.
I could go either, I would put it wherever. I just noticed that the nonprofit, as Walt was talking about restaurants, that nonprofit is missing in that, in this particular economic development element.
And what about entertainment, restaurants and entertainment?
So maybe we just strike out commercial and put restaurants, entertainment, retail, because commercial really is broadly encompassing. But if we're gonna be more focused on types of commercial, maybe we don't need that. Does that make sense?
I thought I was going to be able to leave 7 alone too, but as a former educator, I can't,
I've seen this look on your
Yep,
face, like
I-
you're really trying.
sorry, I just can't split vocational and academic. That is just, nobody in the educational world speaks that way anymore. So, and if they are, shame on them. I would say, I don't know if you just want to leave it in school programs and facilities. Since you went on to speak about athletics, et cetera, that is a more encompassing statement rather than having that be an either or. There are so many academic programs that need that vocational and hands-on component, and there are so many that we would have traditionally called voc ed that need an academic support. So the way I read that, it feels as if it's a split. That is not,
How, can you help me with wording that would help correct the split you're
I
saying?
think if you just say in-school programs and facilities, I would just strike the both vocational and academic.
Okay. I probably wrote those words myself, so I'll
Well, there
share
you go.
what I was thinking
Okay.
is that I don't know that River Delta will actually be involved in vocational schools, and that may just be a lack of knowledge on my part. But maybe they would provide a lead into the vocational programs that would be operated by others. But maybe I don't understand how those programs are actually
Right.
operated. So makes sense. We just take out vocational and academic and investment in both school programs and facilities.
Well, that raises a good question, because Chandra runs that program, and I don't think that has anything to do with River Delta. Is that not correct? I don't know.
I don't know what Chandra is.
Chandra Drury, she runs a adult education program,
Okay.
Yeah,
and it operates here in Rio Vista.
So what if you said in educational programs and facilities? You
That would
went
work.
broader then,
Yeah,
and then that would
I
incorporate
would
that.
agree.
From a school perspective, it would incorporate that.
Mhm.
are you saying drop River Delta? Because that's where my stumbling block is River Delta Unified. You're talking about a very small school population. You're talking about up to 18 years of age. And you really, I think we need to be focused on a broader population. In, my idea of an arts and artisan academy or something talks to an adult population that is learning new skills.
Or trade school.
Yes.
Right, and that's Chandra.
Okay, so there's a few things going on here. One, we've kind of mixed vocational and academic in with a school district. So maybe we need to
Two separate.
break out. So, because the vocational idea, the concept that not everybody needs to have a college education is taking hold, and we have important training opportunities. So maybe break out vocational and then just stick with encourage and support efforts of the district to increase investment. This whole,
Well, why
the
can't
whole
you-
7 is a little bit awkward.
Can't we just make it completely general and say encourage and support efforts and increase investment in educational programs and facilities?
Yeah,
Just make it educational versus even it sounds like it's school programs.
Do we want to call out River Delta here specifically, or is,
I think it's limiting. I think that's what people are saying, right?
okay, so,
Add in and other local programs.
okay. Let me get a couple of notes.
Or we could put a descriptor sentence that at the end that would say this would include working with the school district and vocational and adult. I don't know how long we can go on these policies though.
I think, we really try to keep the policies clear and concise. We will want to keep an eye out for this as we get into the programs, because the programs are the actions that some staff member will pursue. So we want to make sure when we get there that we're covering all the bases. Okay, I think we have a good sense of the direction. So, anything else on policy 7 through 9? Okay, next slide. Explore projects that increase tourism in Rio Vista. I think anybody who's been following the strategic plan knows that there's thoughts of activities, small and large, that could put Rio Vista on the map. So that's what this is speaking to is we really don't know if we're going to go for the adventure park or if it's going to be something more modest on the riverfront or what it is. But we really want to be looking for projects to increase tourism. Support private efforts to create art in public places, murals, statues, as a means of placemaking. So this is what Rio Vision's doing all the time.
I have a comment on this one. I think there needs to be a statement in there to say that, the art in public places needs to work in alignment with overall city branding.
Okay, so
I'm not
link-
saying that it needs to
link,
match up with city branding, but it needs to be looked at in context with branding efforts in the city.
So we want a linkage between policy 11 and the branding. Is that?
Yeah, I think so.
We're going to go through this. Okay.
Yeah.
What is placemaking then? Isn't that branding?
Not specifically. Placemaking to me is the design of a space that welcomes people or creates a certain setting. I would say that the Sassoon waterfront is a great example of placemaking, but I don't think it's branded as Sassoon City. So kind of two different things. I think when we talk about branding, as we spoke earlier about a destination tourism on the Delta, that may be a key theme in your branding. But it could lead to some placemaking. I think there's a little bit of difference. So. Okay, anything else on policies 10, 11, and 12?
Can you strike passing through Rio Vista in 12?
Um,
I think that by including it there, we're giving automatic permission that they're not going to stay. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Does that make sense, everyone? I think that the thought on that was people aren't stopping.
Right.
And that specific group that passes through every morning and every evening are the ones we want to pull off the highway, but
Sure.
does it get to the same place without or passing through Rio Vista? Okay, so we'll strike passing through Rio
Just
Vista.
travelers, period.
What kind of investments can you make when it's a state highway?
Signage. We don't have any
Yeah.
sign coming into Rio Vista other than that little wooden sign.
Yeah.
Right,
And then the sale.
when they're already passing the city.
Well, and candidly, Highway 12 is not our best face. Get on Main Street and you're in a different community. Highway 12 is kind of anywhere highway passing through a little town.
Lights down Main Street, the sign, all of that.
Right,
Invite people.
Could be
to go that
landscaping.
way.
yeah.
think the
Many groups
highway-
have talked
Highway
about
12
archways and
improvements will-
signage, and
Yeah, streetscape improvements.
Tom actually had a plan years ago.
So,
I just mean you're limited on what you can do.
we are, but we could also offer programs for facade improvements. We could, the outside of the state highway right of way, we could have streetscape improvements. So there's things we could do to dress it up. And
Yeah,
then, of course.
and that's part of
signage.
the improvement project that's coming, hopefully gonna happen. And we already have an easement across the triangle to put signage there. We just have to get the budget.
Okay, next slide. Now we're into the program. So these should be clear actions that staff knows what to do. And if we do these actions, we should start to see that economic development energy grow. So first is adopt, regularly update, and implement the Rio Vista Economic Development Strategy or strategic plan. Is it strategy plan or strategic plan? Yeah, so we'll have to correct that strategic plan. Yeah, and this goes on to say, present an annual report to council describing efforts, achievements, proposed activities for the next year. So this starts to put staff's feet to the fire. Annually has to come to council and say, what did we do and what are we going to do? So that's a very important program there. Number two, refine and implement branding of Rio Vista that conveys and creates an identity for tourists visiting the community. So this is, we know the council's interested in branding and creating that identity. ED3 support.
I've got a comment on that second one.
Yes,
I think the language needs to be a little more definitive at the start. I was thinking something more like develop and implement in a clear, focused fashion, a city branding program that conveys, creates identity.
I like it, but I need you to say it one more time.
Develop and implement in a clear, focused fashion, a city branding program that conveys and creates an identity.
Take off passing through Vista again.
And it needs to be an identity that's, for tourists and commuters, but it needs to be for the people that live here too.
Okay, so we'll also strike and commuters passing through Rio Vista. Is that correct?
You can leave and commuters, yeah, but
You
strike the
wanted to say
passing through.
Residents and tourists.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Residents and tourists.
So residents and tourists visiting the community or?
All the residents are in.
Or residents and tourists visiting the community.
For residents and visitors.
Okay, all right. That was,
That one also to me seems kind of closed-ended. It seems like a project that you're going to do and then you're done with it, not a program that is ongoing. And it's just a matter of,
Um, So the thought is that this has some kind of ongoing effort?
well, if it's a program, it should be ongoing. It should be something that you're doing every year. Because it should be continually updated, as you said, in program number 1, regularly update and implement. To me, a program is something that you're ongoing, you're adjusting as the needs change. A project is you redefine, you implement the branding and you're done. There needs to, I don't, that's my thought process.
I get the concept, maybe the refreshing the branding is something that would get identified periodically. I don't think you do branding every year.
No, but
Okay.
that as an ongoing program, it should be there should be something that says it's ongoing as opposed to one and done.
Continually refine.
Well, maybe something can be added to the ED1 program. That's the annual update, that can just speak, specifically, to what steps, we've taken that are kind of reinforcing the brand strategy.
Or how about just adding periodically revisit branding, revisit and refine branding efforts?
Okay.
So, okay. The third one, I don't think we've talked about, support and facilitate events in Rio Vista. This is the idea of just give people something to come here for. And I think we're already doing a good job of that. Maybe we can do an even better job.
Can we, I would remove downtown. We're talking the whole community. We're not talking.
Okay.
This
Right.
is an economic development program for Rio Vista as a whole. Right.
So just strike downtown.
Yes.
I think that, the last sentence, considering specific themes and types of events, I think we need to have some language to say, evolve current events to align with the city's new brand also. I mean, we do have important and popular community events, and I don't think we should necessarily look at doing a whole new set of events, but see if we can evolve them into, something that, while keeping traditions can, be more of an attractive to, the audience we're trying to bring.
How would we word that here? I think the idea is we have some great events. Now, how do we align those events with the brand that we're seeking to establish?
Yeah,
Is
you're
that-
saying that could become signature events. We already have, Bass Derby, Hog August Bites that have become kind of signature events here. We have historic value. But something about, we can consider new events, but also evolve the established ones to align with the city's new brand approach
Okay.
or with the city's brand.
Okay, I think I got the concept. All right, next one. Implement programs to enhance the appearance and aesthetics of downtown on the waterfront. We know that we have some buildings that aren't maintained as well as we'd like. There may be other things in the downtown area in particular. Is this a downtown issue or is it broader than downtown? Because I've heard on a couple of issues, you should be thinking bigger than downtown. This one, I tend to think is really more focused on downtown, but any thoughts on that?
Are you calling Highway 12 downtown?
No, I'm
No.
not. So,
Army base downtown?
what's that?
Is the Army base considered downtown?
No.
No.
So it does need to be bigger. Yeah. Okay,
But for the people traveling through, that's all they see is Highway 12, so it is our downtown.
it's interesting how that works. Until you spend some time here, you think that is downtown Rio Vista.
I'm not sure where this would fit, but we talk about parking, and if we are attracting visitors to walk downtown or to visit, if once we get the Army base going up and going or whatever, there has to be a place for people as they come off the bridge. There has to be some direction that's close by where there's significant parking for cars and motorhomes and all of that kind of stuff. If we're going to attract visitors, we got to give them a place to put their vehicle so they can get out of it.
Oh, I kind of disagree because we do the Bass Derby and Hog August Bites, and there's anywhere from 10 to 20,000 people that come in over those weekends, and they find parking. I mean, we don't say, go this way for parking or that way. They find parking. They, get a whole bunch of people in a car together, only one car as opposed to 2 or 3. So, I mean, it might seem like there's an issue with parking, but there doesn't seem to be. I mean, if we can attract 20,000 people without any designated parking, I think we're doing okay. It's my opinion.
Well,
Be ashamed to take
being,
prime real estate and turn it into a parking lot.
yes, but being contrary here, we're talking people that come here, like, they know the area, they come here.
Mhm.
We're not taught, what I'm talking about is attracting somebody from San Francisco or Oakland to make the trip out here. I want to make it easy for them to get out of their vehicle.
But if they're coming from San Francisco or Oakland, they're already used to finding parking in those cities. So,
Thank you all.
no, I'm just
No,
throwing you the other
right.
side, I mean, go to Alameda and try to find parking. I mean, you're parking blocks away from where you want to go. So
Right, when you go to Davis, I mean, it's
Yeah.
a cool little town, but there's there's one parking lot by the movie theater, but when I go
Right.
there to go to dinner or whatever, I know I'm gonna pad that with like 20 minutes. to
Right.
Find a parking spot and walk 4 or 5 blocks.
Mhm.
It's just, and it makes it more.
I actually think it
it brings
adds to
more
the,
people.
yeah,
I don't know what, that's weird, but it does.
no. I think it adds to attractiveness, actually. It's psychologically, I think you're saying, wow, this is a busy, vibrant town, and that's what you enjoy about it. Yeah, and I mean, if you drove down Main Street and there's absolutely all the spots were empty because they were parked at a parking lot, you would probably think this is a ghost town.
Okay, ED5, complete an inventory of vacant underutilized properties in the city and prepare a plan for utilizing and leveraging such properties. So this certainly would include city properties to the extent we have undeveloped properties because we have a lot of ability to leverage those. But I think it's also the privately owned vacant properties. What can we do to get them in play? So that's important.
Good.
And then ED6, work with the school district, local employers, training and educational institutions to provide youth training, vocational programs that develop employment skills. So this program is related to the one we spent a lot of time looking at. Is the program getting us where we want to be? Does it have the right emphasis? And also, ED5, ED6, thoughts on those two?
I thought earlier the issue was that there was adult education, which I guess maybe I'm not reading that correctly. Let me read it again.
I think the latter part of that's supposed to address that, huh? Develop employment skill, well, I guess that's younger adults.
Not necessarily.
Not
I mean, people
necessarily.
Get retrained.
Can we
Yeah,
drop,
times.
I
can we
couldn't-
drop,
Yeah.
Yeah,
provide training in vocational programs that develop employment skills?
Yeah, just
That
take
would be
youth
better.
out.
Just take youth out.
Mhm.
that's fair. Does our principal concur?
Reluctantly.
Anything else on these two? Next slide. Okay, continue to monitor industry trends and identify the industries, emerging industries that are best suited for Rio Vista. You know, I think we spoke a few minutes ago about this transition to online shopping. And of course, during COVID, everybody was working remotely. So there's been some real upheavals in what's happening in the world. There certainly is an emerging land use of logistics, you know, but I'm not sure that's something we actually want to court.
No.
It tends to bring a lot of trucks and
Yeah,
not
not
give
with our
you much back.
transportation.
So, yeah, so, but I think keeping an eye on the trends is important. One, it is interesting. We spoke of restaurants earlier. Yeah. You really can't, I guess you can buy food online, but it's still produced locally and somebody's driving it to you, but it's still a locally produced product that comes to you. So food is one of those things that can create both a sense of a place. It can't be replicated by looking at it on a computer screen. So that's kind of, you know, there is a trend to create retail that's an experience rather than just a store where you go and buy something. So that's another idea of an emerging trend that the physical retail we have is going to have to change with the times. So that's all part of what we're thinking of in ED7. ED8, maintain a toolkit of potential economic development funding sources and mechanisms. This is, you know, candidly, I think you all know that you're going to have to do some staffing, or you're going to have to find some contract support, or you're going to have to work with Solano Economic Development Corporation on this kind of thing, because it's hard to really stay on top of funding mechanisms, grants and all of that, as well as pursuing them, applying for them, tracking them. That's just a level of effort that you're going to have to consider. How are we going to do this? Because it's very important. Conduct and review the zoning code and city permit processing procedures. I don't think I've been in a city yet where I heard people say, gosh, these folks make it really easy to open a business. Boy, it's easy to get a building permit here. Man, those planners, they're great.
Yeah, you never
So-
hear that, Paul.
I never hear that. They have Public Works Appreciation Month. They don't have one for planners. There's a reason. We probably do have some opportunities to streamline. We recently modified the parking standards because we felt like they were going to get in the way of economic development. That's a good example of the types of things we should be doing. We should be looking at how quickly we process permits. Sometimes cities can move faster. I will tell you that sometimes the applicants make it really hard for cities to move faster. So there's usually, you know, two sides to every story, but the bottom line is we want to be quick, we want to be nimble, and we don't want to be holding up businesses that want to operate in Rio Vista. So that's all part of number 9 there. Thoughts on these 3?
Is there, I'm not sure where to put it, but inserting somehow incentives to businesses, for instance, what comes to mind are tax incentives for new businesses to come in.
I'm not,
Yeah,
I agree. I'm not sure whether it's right here, but maybe it's a new program.
Mhm.
The concept of incentives. I think I heard a comment about incentives in the council discussion as well, but I wasn't entirely sure what incentivizing meant.
Yeah,
So-
maybe easy to do, even if we made it easy to do business, if we had incentives to bring and attract businesses to come here and want to be here, to basically get their foot in the door. And I don't know what that would be, but I do know tax incentives are sometimes used, like deferred taxes or certain taxes or fees are waived. Those are all incentives.
Maybe that's part of number 8, actually. You know, that's part of the tool.
Yeah.
Is I would probably leave it at financial incentives rather than
Mhm.
tax incentives,
Okay.
but how about if we add it in there?
Sure.
Paul, the city permitting process, aren't there programs, and I think some cities already do this, where you can do this all online and pay your fee, and then it comes back to you and say you've accomplished everything that you needed to, or you need to come back for this? Maybe that's something that we obviously maybe need to look at right away.
It's worth looking at, but I think you really need to talk with your,
Right.
public works director and your building folks and find out what the level of investment is versus the return for the customer. So you don't want to bring $1 million solution to solve a $10 problem.
Right, but when we have people coming in and giving all their documents, and then they come back 2 months later and they say that they're lost and there's no
Right.
record of them, I mean, at least if it's done online, it's instant, the day they did it. And I don't know if there's a cost involved, but that would be one of the things I think that we could improve on.
Yeah, I absolutely concur on that one. I think so many of the processes in our city could be automated. And for instance, when somebody submits a plan, that it gets uploaded and they actually would have visibility instantly into what step we are in. Right now, we use Excel spreadsheets to track where a project in, and half the time it's not even accurate or it's weeks behind. I mean, if you have it online, you're going to see exactly where it is in the process. And it'll take staff time from having to do double work as well.
Mhm.
I think those systems are great once they're up and running. They are significant investments to get up and running. I've lived through that transition in a few agencies, and so
What's significant?
I used to do this for a living at Costa. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's training, it's upkeep, it's software updates, it's
Well,
just a big,
I'm sure it is.
you need certain people, you have to hire people to be able to.
Well, I think a lot of that stuff, you think about online shopping and the applications that were available 15 years ago, you'd have to do a custom implementation of that. And I think so many of these processes now are automated and they have functionality like a website. I used to design websites and they were $200,000 and $250,000 to do. And now you get one for $20, right? Online.
Well, maybe
with a
some
few
of the
clicks.
software that the city has pieces that you can add to
Mhm.
that would already have that. They just
is
maybe
there,
have not-
is there a
It's just
particular
steps.
aspect? Is it the building permits in particular that we're very interested in?
Well, and
Um,
plans that they have to submit. I mean,
Well, that's all part of the plan,
Okay.
building permits, yeah.
That's the stuff I spoke to with Christina. The, the process when you want to open a business, what are the steps involved? And I believe she's actually working on that,
Okay,
not the automation, but the process.
Yeah,
that's a future agenda item.
Yeah, perfect.
so how about if we put in a program to explore automation, and let us give it some study? I can tell you when you start out down this road, you want to have everything all integrated
Oh, there she is.
and
Oh, voila.
I'll open it up for public comment.
you're not on, I don't think.
Oh, put-
Okay.
Never been on that
Thank
side.
you. I didn't want to break anything. So yes, so staff actually just met to create a process that could better communicate to the public how to start a business with different scenarios, like a business, like a retail business, a restaurant, like just a few examples to help them understand the process. They're working on that. And then we've also talked and discussed about an online system where developers can submit their plans online. They won't be able to see every step of the way, but they will be able to see that it's submitted and who it's to. So they won't be able to see when that person opens it, but they will be able to see that it's been submitted to plan check, outside plan check. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it's subject to budget approval. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Before you leave, about 5 years ago, the chamber put a booklet together, how to open a business in Rio Vista. And you might reach out to the chamber and that might help you with some of the things that sounds like you want to accomplish, which is good.
Yeah, and I've also discussed the concept with Councilmember or Vice Mayor Okamura. I apologize. So we are working actively on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can stay if you want. You don't have to watch in there.
Just trying to go home.
Okay.
Okay. So we will add in a program about explore automation and digital submittals for building permits. And
Okay.
so we can look into that and then we'll figure out exactly how broad we want to get. The more broad we are in those systems, the more complex they get. And I've seen them get really burdensome when you try to do too much, when you try to hook your finance department in with your building department in with your
Oh,
code
yeah.
enforcement and
A
then
full
you're into
Oracle
enterprise
system.
software, it's a $500,000.
Yeah, no, I mean, you do an
Yeah.
Oracle implementation that you're gonna be living in hell for 5 years. I do realize that, but I mean, I think that as we just go along, we check the boxes and technology gets a little better and the applications get a little better. So it's one of those
Great.
things where it's continuous improvement.
Mhm.
And an evolution rather than
Yeah.
a giant rollout.
Right.
Thank you. Staff thanks you. Okay. So let's see, so we were on the trends, we talked about the toolkit and the zoning code. So I think we've got these three.
Mhm.
Next slide. Coordinate with and support the Solano Economic Development Corporation. So these are just entities. Maybe this is not comprehensive, but we have the Economic Development Corporation, Downtown Association, Chamber, and other groups. So the idea is we don't have to do this alone and we shouldn't try to do it alone. 11, coordinate with local businesses and organizations to promote Rio Vista's strengths, tourist attractions, and the regional and statewide media to expand tourism. So this is the idea of getting the word out further and wider, hopefully draw more people from the Bay Area to visit Rio Vista. Consider development of transient visitors dock to encourage Delta boaters. So right now, I don't think there's a lot of potential for somebody to just boat up to Rio Vista in any kind of numbers, go to a restaurant and hang out for a couple of hours and then jump on their boat. You know, I don't think there's a lot of facilities that will accommodate that. You all probably know the number of boats that could do that at any given time. I do not, but the idea is expanding that. We're on the Delta. There's a lot of people out there boating and they love to stop and get out and get some food, use a restroom, get a beer, whatever. So,
They do that at the point a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And how many boats can tie up?
Depends. I don't know.
That's not bad. I mean,
I've seen 4 come inside in the harbor off of that dock, and then I've seen 3 boat tied up on the dock on the outside when you're sitting out and looking over it. So I've seen a total of 7 that are.
that's kind of what I would have expected. So,
Mhm.
But maybe we need a sign on the river that says Rio Vista.
okay,
That's a
we'll have
concept.
program. We'll get it done. I'll send a note to Phil. So I think we all agree on the desire. Do we have the wording right to help draw these Delta boaters in? Is there something more to this that we should be looking at?
One thing, well, it's similar but different. I usually will mention in the summertime, we attract a lot of people into our town for the beach. And you'll just see beaches in this area are not real common, so we get a lot of people from the Oakley area, Brentwood.
You're talking Sandy Beach?
Sandy Beach.
Yeah.
And so, that might be part of a branding thing too, but just promoting the beach. Cause it does attract people from out of the area.
Well, imagine also they could actually safely get from Sandy Beach to downtown and there's no pathway to do it. Yeah,
Not yet.
not yet.
Okay, anything else on these three? Next slide. Investigate and pursue high-speed broadband internet throughout the city. So, this is the Starbucks trend. You can go in and have a cup of coffee and you can get on their Wi-Fi. Do we want to think about doing something more broadly, maybe making free Wi-Fi available in the downtown area or in certain locations? So that's the concept here.
You know, about 2 years ago, there was some information about a grant that the city could get if they were economically challenged city, that if there was free Wi-Fi. Remember that?
Mhm.
I don't know if we ever applied for that grant.
I don't know if it was a grant or was it, I remember when there was a competition
It
and,
was a grant.
okay,
State
I think it was a grant, yeah.
grant.
Hmm.
I don't know if we applied for that, but
don't know.
then, with like down at the youth center and other areas,
Yeah.
the kids could use free Wi-Fi to do their homework and all things.
Well, and furthermore, I think it'd attract the tech crowd to potentially even move here if they have access to high.
Tap, you can bring your laptop down and sit out
Mhm.
and work, like Ben's friend's patio.
Right.
and have free Wi-Fi.
How,
About that.
how is the fast service in Rio Vista?
It's
Is it-
not.
Do you have,
We have sufficient now if you have Xfinity. I mean, I have a gig
okay,
and so that's,
My Xfinity
They have
died for
Frontier
4
too.
hours today.
yeah, you are. Well, they're gonna go out of business, in my opinion.
Well, there's the issue too that Verizon, I guess, is really spotty just for mobile service.
Yes.
Here in the town, AT&T works fine, but I understand Verizon's not very good for mobile service.
Actually, AT&T, I don't think works out at Trilogy.
Now, it's
So-
the best thing yet. My third
Oh.
service, it's the best one. I even get service in the house when the Wi-Fi goes down. Sit in my house, use my phone, surf the web on my phone in the house, no Wi-Fi. The signal is so strong. I don't know where the tower is, but AT&T is.
Yeah, Verizon is not.
Yeah, they're doing upgrades, but it's not there.
so is there, this program is speaking directly to that kind of free Wi-Fi zone? Is that
I think
what
it's
we
good.
want to be focused on here?
Yeah, I think it's good.
Encourage commercial industrial development by ensuring availability of suitable sites, development and providing zoning that facilitates uses. This is getting to that idea of, diversified, economic base, particularly with the industrial. And when we say commercial in this context, we're not really talking about stores as much as maybe, heavier commercial opportunities. So the business park or the lands that are beyond Airport Road along the waterfront, the industrial areas. Evaluate the costs and benefits of relocating City Hall. That's a big one, but we hear it often mentioned. It would be a big investment on the part of the city, but it would open up a fantastic site for uses that people visiting the community would really appreciate. And then City Hall, candidly, it's wonderful to have a great view from your office, but is that really important from a City Hall function? Probably not. So this is one that I think you'll wrestle with over time, and determine when you have the resources to consider making that move and what it would look like.
The police department, it'd be great to have one. Remember when Fairchild did that, I was 8 years old, but it was a big deal when they built the new city hall and the police department was right there. And it's
Yep.
Took an old area that was called Waterman Park, and it was, almost like Section 8 housing area. Eliminated it, built a big lake and all these buildings. It's just a huge deal in the city, but Fairfield was about this size then.
Okay, any changes, any comments on these three?
Well, going back to 13, we had the discussion about which cell service is best. I think high-speed internet and cell service, because landlines are pretty much gone, that those two things we've got to have high-quality cell service and internet service for business as well as residents and tourists. I mean, everybody's going to rely on that in the future.
Being as we don't build or control those facilities, I don't know what our action is.
I don't either,
Okay,
but we need to promote the availability as much as possible.
okay.
You
Does
could
that
add
rise-
something that talks about working with service providers to ensure that we have high-speed access. For instance, we could, in our city, last year I was at a city conference and they talked about micro trenching and about how inexpensive that is to basically bring in fiber optic into a city, and it's they trench down only 8 inches along the sidewalk and you could drop in, fiber optic throughout your entire city. So maybe something about partnering with service providers, if everyone agrees.
We get some new sidewalks.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, that will be a new program that will probably follow 13, related to but different. Okay, next slide. 16. Implement strategies to improve the character appearance of current Highway 12 through Rio Vista. So these are specific actions to get to what we've talked about a couple of times this evening, that Highway 12 is the front door of Rio Vista to many, many people that pass through, and what can we do to make it look better? We can look at zoning regulations. We can look at sign code for highway commercial zone. We can seek grant funds for beautifications. That would probably be either streetscape improvements or facade improvements. And then a stronger connection between Highway 12 and downtown. I think the roads are there, but they're just not terribly apparent. There's not a really obvious connection. And so I think, as we spoke of the sign earlier, that would be an example, that maybe some wayfinding, maybe some landscape improvements that could, make people more aware that there's really this neat little town just off the highway. Any thoughts on this one?
I had a comment, and, I don't know if this is the right spot for it, or, the timeline of the general plan, but I was thinking about some kind of a statement to discuss envisioning the route's evolution should the bypass occur in the future, because there's going to be ongoing changes that happen to Highway 12, and I think we need to look off a little bit further in the distance and, try to understand how it might evolve should a bypass occur to the city. Because, that's going to happen at a certain point in time, whether it's 20 years, 50 years. But, we don't want to, we want to have that in back of mind when we're trying to push these improvements in Highway 12.
That discussion actually came up in circulation as well, where we said, we think the highway is going to move. What do we want to do now? I think we came to a conclusion to that discussion that Highway 12 will never expand beyond 2 lanes. So we don't ever want that to become a 4-lane road. So that was at least we drew that line. Is we don't want Highway 12 through Rio Vista to be 4 lanes.
I thought we did talk about a 4-lane that would go north of.
No, that would be the bypass. I'm talking about the existing
Oh,
alignment.
sorry,
Yeah.
misunderstood.
Yeah, so I think the land use is probably the better place to address that. because, we can start to establish land use policies about that corridor. So it's probably really outside of economic development, but an important consideration.
So,
But even from an economic development standpoint, though, just kind of envisioning the city evolving to that, that the spine is not this big traffic corridor, I don't know. But you're right, mechanically, it's probably, you're correct.
Yeah, I've struggled with this in other communities. One community I worked with had the heavy rail corridor running right next to what should be Main Street. And that heavy rail corridor pushed every nice use away. And then you were trying to recreate a different kind of a space. So how do we get restaurants on Highway 12? You don't, other than fast foods, you don't see restaurants on Highway 12 really. You see grocery stores, you see gas stations, you see hotels, but you don't really see a walkable place today.
I just have a comment because I know this is specific to Highway 12, but from an economic development perspective, I think the missed opportunity here is that we have disconnected developments in Rio Vista. And I know that one of my biggest rants is that when you go out to Liberty Island or Brand Ranch, when it comes out, they're not connected to the downtown, and those individuals that move there should be attracted to our downtown. And so I think there should be something about safe and attractive passageways to our downtown, to the riverfront, and that should be by bike lanes and pedestrian pathways, et cetera. I mean, right now, we always, as a city, we point the finger at the developers and say they were supposed to put in the sidewalks or they were supposed to put in the landscaping. So now for the last 20 years, we haven't had any trees running down Airport from Liberty Island all the way down to Church, and from Church up to Highway 12. There's nothing there. It's just barren landscape. So it's not an attractive way. We're not bringing people out of these developments to come downtown, and we need to create landscaping that will support that, I think.
separate from Highway 12.
Separate from Highway 12, because I think we're missing the opportunity right here. I think we have a lot of people, if there's safe passageway, they would take a bike and come downtown and
Yes.
have a drink of coffee and maybe go to the bakery and whatnot. And I think that's very important. And not only that, it just creates a connected community.
Well, I would go one beyond that. I think we need to look at pathways to get golf carts.
Yes,
Use,
that's potential. Yeah,
any way to get away from Highway 12, but get people out of their house to come out to the larger community.
right. And we're a retirement community for the most part. And so you think about those individuals, they complain about Highway 12. Well, what if we don't have to get on Highway 12? What if we're getting on a pedestrian pathway or getting on a golf court path and just coming on downtown? I think some people just avoid coming downtown because they don't want to get on our roads. But if you have safe passageways down here, then more people would come, and I think it would help support economic development.
Ed, when you came in on your bike, are you going home on your bike?
Yes, and I'm going
So-
to go across a number of unsafe locations.
But I mean, you obviously don't take 12 home. You take
No,
what airport?
That's correct. And so, and so that's a perfect example. We've been talking about this a long time about how, well, hopefully we get an easement across the Triguero property so we could have passageway from St. Francis underneath the
True.
bridge.
Mhm.
I mean, right now I have to jog up, go along the highway and jump back onto Virginia to get to St. Francis, and then have the circuitous way to get back into Trilogy. And so I think there's a huge opportunity there. In fact, I drew a map and did little trees on it. So you want to see it?
Okay. So I got some good notes. I think that those comments are going to result in a new program, additional program probably. Next slide. Evaluate the staffing requirements to effectively implement economic development programs. These are wonderful programs we've talked about. They would keep any very effective person busy all day long. And we don't have a person who's not already tasked with lots and lots of jobs today. So you will, as a city, need to consider whether you want to have regular employees, whether you can work with another agency to share somebody, there's lots of ways to go about it, but you're going to have some extra hands to help pursue these programs.
My only comment would be, I don't think, it seems to me that that should be one of the, no, I know this isn't in any particular order, but if you can, I would move that to the very front. I mean, that seems to be one of the number one things we have to do to get it jump started.
It is. Great, we'll move that up.
And then since I think this is the end, I also have this comment about just STEM, science, technology. I mean, we're trying to develop a community that has the financial resources to spend in our community. And I think I think about the limited space. We talk about limited real estate here to develop commercial out. Science and technology doesn't take a lot of space. You need a cube and you need a high internet connectivity. You have good internet connectivity, right? And so we could take a building that maybe the Rio Vista Farms and you have, 100 employees there, you could have 400 employees there. And so I don't know how to put it, but it seems like should be a program that we try to bring in and attract those types of jobs here. And in doing so, I think there's another thing in here that talked about the partnership with the schools. Then you would have a stronger STEM program in our schools as well. And this is probably a question for Ms. Heckman, but it seems to me by bringing businesses in that are different than just simply agriculture, we will be able to attract a different mix of our student body as well, and the people that come here.
And I think the current movements are to actually expand it to STEAM so that you're putting the A of art in there because of the creative thought process
Mhm.
with AI that's going to come
Yes.
to be able to make the cross between the science and tech and access that. So no, I would
Yeah.
agree
I mean,
100%.
that's a huge concern, I think, to everyone here is AI and how that's going to disrupt so many industries and take away so many different types of jobs. And if we continue to keep our head in the sand and say, oh, well, we could continue to have all these jobs, those jobs are going to go away. And so if we're not being forward thinking, I think we're really missing something.
So what does the program look like?
A focus on, what do you call it now?
Future
STEM,
technologies?
future technologies, STEM.
Yeah, you just add add an A. So STEAM so you've got science, technology,
STEAM.
engineering,
Okay.
art, and mathematics.
And is that something that's pursued with the district? Is that what?
Well, it'd
What's
be
the ask?
pursued from the economic development and in our commercial properties to attract those types of businesses. And that in turn is going to trigger the schools to put in programs in place that are going to support them.
So the kids can stay here.
Right, exactly. I like it, STEAM.
Yeah, that's the new STEAM.
Yeah. Feel the heat. Okay. We do have the rest of the element. I'm not sure if anybody has specific comments on the text portion.
I have a couple. On chapter 4, it would be page 2. The first sentence, it says, age-restricted communities in the Trilogy and Liberty projects. Could you just add Liberty at Summit, because Liberty is different than Liberty at Summit?
Okay, so just at Summit.
Yeah, Liberty at Summit projects. And then on page 8, you're talking about the location of the possible California Forever community, and it talks about north side of Highway 12. Well, I don't know my north, south, east, west in this town, and I still can't figure it out. So if you could add the roundabout area, I think people will know exactly where that is.
The roundabout area.
Yeah, I don't know what you want to call it, but I think if you say
Oh,
roundabout
On Highway 12.
on Highway
yeah.
12, I
That's
think
a-
people know
12 and
exactly where it's
113.
gonna be.
113, 12.
It's a landmark that most people
I
know.
appreciate you people are directionally challenged.
We-
You say north when you should say northwest. but- So just reference,
The roundabout somewhere in there, like Lisa said, Highway 12 and 113 or whatever you want to call it. Luckily, my car has north, south, east, west on it.
okay.
Does it?
I have a comment about, whenever you use California forever, do you think you should say California forever, meaning the city, and then California forever within Rio Vista? Because they're two quite different things in a way, since we have some control over the one in the city.
It's an
Right.
Interesting point.
There was a-
because there is this
I'll find it.
group that's called California Forever, but they're not proposing anything in the city now. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I could use Flannery as compared to the development that's going to be on the ballot or something, right? Is that, I think that's the struggle is there's this project proposed on the ballot, but then that group also owns land in the city, and those are very different animals.
Yeah, and specifically under 4.8, page 8, I caught that as well. And I thought there was a fix. Well, a couple of things. One, I think the acreage is incorrect. It says 18,000 plus. I think it's 17,000. You could say 17,000 plus. I think it's under 18,
Okay,
I believe.
did they whittle it down?
Yeah, that's what I understand, 17.5. And then in that second paragraph, it says that Solano County Development, the city can comment on an attempt to guide the review of California Forever Development, but cannot directly control the form of the project. I just added in if outside of Rio Vista city limits, because it sounds like we don't have any control over anything they do, and we do within our city limits.
And is that on page 8 as well?
That's on page 8, second paragraph, 4.8. And then just consistency wise, and I'll just point out 4.1, page 1, you refer to Rio Vista Main Street and Riverfront. I would just change it to waterfront to be consistent. I think we're calling it
What page?
waterfront.
What page is that?
1.
Okay.
And this was more a Lisa comment or question, I think. Did you have comments? Because
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was kind of a janky, under challenges, the 4th bullet point up, the River Delta Unified School District faces significant challenges due to the highly spread out school locations. It just seemed
I just
little
think
clunky to me.
geographically dispersed.
yeah, just seemed janky to me.
There's been some discussion within City Hall about, we know that the district faces some challenges because of how spread out they are, but at the same time, we don't want to be casting them in a poor light. If you know what I mean? So we're kind of walking this line of recognizing that the district, by virtue of its geography, the number of students, the number of schools, does have a tough mission, but we don't want to say we have bad schools. That's counterproductive too. So I'm not
Well-
sure how we walk that
So
line.
I
Well,
fixed it,
yeah.
I think.
Oh,
What's
good.
that?
Yeah, so I added to that. So I said,
Okay.
instead of saying highly spread out school, you're geographically dispersed
What page are we on now?
for the bullet that Edwin's talking about.
And then also, I was just going to add, it seems to me that the reason why we're challenged in Rio Vista, when you think about the programs, is just simply because we don't have very many students. So it's very difficult to bring in teachers to teach STEAM when you don't, when you just don't have the student body to, for those courses. And that seems to be a challenge. If I may as well, just going to the very top of the page. California Forever will provide opportunities for economic development in Rio Vista, such as increased service population. And financial support for major infrastructure projects sounded a little odd to me because I just wrote and or potential investment
Okay.
because I don't
These are
know.
a little bit hard for me to get in a way that I'll be able to reconstruct them. Do you want to, either I have to get to the page or do you
Oh.
want to send them along to me?
Okay,
Or I can.
I just want everyone to be in agreement before it's,
Okay,
so I'll read it and maybe everyone could agree or disagree.
and starting out with where we're at and the
This is
document.
page 4.
Still page 4, okay?
California Forever could provide opportunities for economic development in Rio Vista, such as an increased service population and financial support for major infrastructure projects. That's how it reads. And then I was saying to strike financial support for major infrastructure projects, because that's very undefined, and just say and or potential investment. But I don't know if everyone agrees or disagrees.
I think there's some benefit if you just add to it. Leave that financial support for major infrastructure. We could
Mhm.
continue to hope for a bridge and improvements to
Oh, I
Highway
see.
12,
Okay.
et cetera, and maybe getting a ferry system back. And so if you add that your financial support or financial investment as an additional,
Okay,
piece.
yeah, I wasn't actually thinking about the bridge, so it's a good
That's
thought.
what.
That was what
that's
it was.
That's code for.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was thinking about sewage or something else, so.
No, they'll be dealing with their own sewer independently, but it really is the road, you know, a big
Well, why don't we
bypass
just
road.
say roadways then?
We would prefer not to right now. We
Okay.
do not want to highlight that we're looking to
Oh, tipping a hand, you mean?
Caltrans.
Oh.
We're concerned and we believe we have a valid concern that if it appears that Rio Vista is very focused on getting a bypass, then Caltrans may not continue to fund our $87 million project.
Yeah.
We don't want that to happen. So we're
Right.
walking a line of,
I see.
we know we want another road, but we don't want to be banging that drum
Right,
loudly.
I understand. Yeah, I do think potential investment should be in there as well. I
So
mean,
where did we land on that one? We're,
Elisa said add both, put both
Okay.
in. Keep that, don't strike it and just add potential investment. I'm sorry, on page 5, I just didn't follow it. Maybe it needs to be stated clearer, or maybe I'm just being dense. The second bullet point, that depending on plans of California Forever, the city's future development could be somewhat limited. Maybe if you could just explain that bullet point.
when we started out down this road, we thought, we didn't know who Flannery was. We
Right.
thought we were boxed in. Now we know that the folks who own Esperson, a property we thought was dead in the water, might want to develop. So that's really the uncertainty is what is California Forever going to want to do with Esperson? And are they going to want to do anything that would approximate development that we would want to see on Esperson? So that's kind of was the evolution that when we first started writing these sections, we didn't even know what California Forever was. All we knew was Esperson was locked up. Nobody's talking to us. Cino's not talking to us. We're boxed in by this thing called Flannery. We don't have anywhere to go.
Right, the 16.5 though encompassed all of those properties though, I believe.
I don't believe that encompassed Esperson.
It did.
No,
Didn't-
I don't think so.
I thought
It
it did.
included Cino, Brand Ranch,
City
infill.
property,
What's up?
city property infill, that's 62 acres.
Yep.
Okay, that would make sense then.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think in the last general plan, it did envision that, as part of the development, we were projecting a population of about 21,000, including the Esperson property.
Yeah, Brand's probably gonna be around 1,000 homes. Cino is about 1,000 homes. City property could be a few hundred, so 2,300, 3 people a household.
Right,
That's roughly how you get those numbers.
So this number would be bigger. 16.5.
Can you, so it's on page, it's the discussion of California forever and limited expansion. I think probably the sentence just needs a good looking at.
Yeah,
Because it's,
page 5,
Yeah.
second bullet point from the top.
and again, this is, because we have had this kind of changing landscape of, what we know about California forever, that some of this language hasn't quite kept up, so. Okay, other thoughts?
So I just struggled with the formatting where you talked about California forever and then like ended the whole section with 4.8 that was about California forever. So it felt to me like that 4.8 needed to be really more like a 4.12. Like it just needed to be earlier in order for the earlier mentions about California forever to make any sense in the whole structure of this section.
Okay, so I'm not looking at it, so walk me through it one more time.
So take 4.8, which is all about California. I'll give this to you. I'm just
Okay.
doing what Edwin is doing, just so that everybody can hear. That 4.8 needs to come earlier in the whole economic section, more like a 4.12. In order to capture, because it talks about California forever, describes a little bit what it is. And where it sits right now, it comes after multiple statements that California forever, where the person's like, what is this California forever thing?
Yes.
sense?
Organizationally, I know exactly what you're talking about because I did struggle a little bit with where do we put this thing?
Okay.
So,
I would say the same thing for the key considerations. I think they need to come almost before your challenges, because how they are written are giving context to why the challenges are challenges. In part.
okay. That would be an interesting, adjustment because I think we've been using this sequencing throughout all the elements, so.
Fair.
But if it's the right thing to do, we do it in all of the elements.
For me, it picked for me some of the explanation that came in those key considerations, then made some of the conclusions that it felt like you were drafting in the challenges in the earlier bullets make some sense. Whereas before, I was literally asking questions like, how did you get to this conclusion? Because I didn't get to key considerations until afterwards.
Right. Okay, they're part of the basis for those outcomes.
Yeah.
Especially for first time readers, it'll flow easier for them and they'll understand what we're talking about later.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Let me see if anything else really sticks out. I think on page 3, the second bullet, I understand that this is drafted from the EDSP, and I think this is a problem that they missed this phrase that I'm going to stick in. So the second bullet, that it's a charming artistic riverfront community with a proud history of agricultural production and involvement. Because I think that highlights the transition that we are in.
With a proud history.
With a proud history of agricultural production and involvement. Again, I'll give this to you. I wrote it out. You're welcome to have these notes.
Great.
On page 4, under challenges, it's the 4th bullet where it says Rio Vista lacks the trained workforce. How do we know that? Was there a study done or something that is somehow being referenced? I couldn't find it in the huge strategic plan. I didn't see anything referenced there, so it's like, how do we even know that we don't have the trained workforce?
And what are the major employers we would have to have the workforce for the major employers, but we don't know who the major employers
So
are, so.
we reached an assumption that we believe to be true, but have no real basis to support. I think that it's likely.
I think you have a lot of trained workforce who leaves this community and commutes.
Ah. What page is that on?
Page 4. It is the 5th bullet in challenges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I'm not
sorry,
sure
4.
what they're,
Thank you.
They're using lack of trained workforce to say that we're not attracting employers. But what are the employers looking for that we don't have trained workforce?
So probably we need to back that off to just a statement that employment, trained workforces, economic development, there's a relationship, but we don't really know that we don't have the trained workforce.
I'm wondering if you,
Yeah.
if you just flip the sentence, something about employment in the current situation or something like that, employment opportunities for younger Rio Vista residents to pursue careers in the communities are limited, which allows a community to infer or something like that, or implies that the trained workforce required isn't present because they have to commute. They're commuting if they live here.
Yeah, but if you're talking about younger, don't you mean students just out of high school or maybe college, but shouldn't we just strike younger?
Fair, fair.
Well, this is also just a little odd, just because this is a forward-looking document and we don't know what those careers are gonna be, so we would have no idea whether we have a trained workforce. And that's what I was talking about. If we focus in on STEAM, then maybe we are lacking that trained workforce right now, but we don't know that yet,
Mhm.
right?
So we want to recognize the connection between economic development and trained workforce, and we want to support the development of a trained workforce, but not reach any conclusion that we don't have it or that it's even holding us back.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't belong even under a challenge. It's just something we need to be aware of.
Or identify it as an unknown. We don't know, given that it is, given the community standing.
Okay.
Or maybe it just goes under one of the implementation programs, ensuring that we're matching up career opportunities with our
Hmm.
with our educational programs
Mhm.
or something to that effect.
Brian,
Because we don't know if it's a challenge, actually.
It's a great
Brian,
point.
Brian, you can sit anywhere you like. It's okay.
Did you always sit at the back of the classroom?
No, not always. I can attest to not always.
Come on up front.
The next bullet, that just adding to the river delta, the one where we change the geographically dispersed. I think we just need to say, and numerically low student populations that are inherent in a rural community or in rural communities, since if you're going to leave district in there that stretches beyond Rio Vista, that helps you with, that helps. Because the next statement is, as a result, the schools in the district are sometimes not perceived as academically strong. For me, as a result, is a concluding statement, and I don't know how you're arriving at that, just given the challenge of being geographically dispersed and numerical.
I want to get back to my notes where I talked about. So it's geographically dispersed and
School locations and numerically low student populations that are inherent in rural communities. You could even say aging rural communities if you want to. I didn't think about that, but.
great.
And then I struggle with leading, the next sentence leading in with, as a result. I'm not sure you can use that as a concluding entrance to that second sentence.
Okay.
And page 7. You've just got a weird paragraph that however, just like either needs to be in the paragraph or it needs to be a new paragraph giving a formatting.
I'm sorry, say again?
Sure. The second, you see where however starts, there's a weird ending to that kind of that first paragraph and then however, you just either needed a return. It just needs to be another paragraph looking at your formatting.
Okay.
And then in 4.7 in the second sentence, or sorry, second line,
Yep,
I think the downtown is actually bounded by the river in the east, not by Front Street.
that's the dilemma.
Well, you
Okay.
go on to talk about land that's literally on the other side of Front Street, that's more east than Front Street in that paragraph. So
Okay,
So that's.
so bounded by Front Street, bounded by the river on the east.
yes, on the east. The other ones I have, I can just hand to you. They're more.
Okay,
And then I just have a quick comment. I think one of Lisa's first comments, I think it was generally about the economic development plan. It seems like we need to make sure that that gets over to Christina as well to be maybe integrated onto that side so it's consistent. I forgot what the comment was, but it was one of your first comments.
I just said that so much of this seemed to have been taken from Stonecraft's work and that in the 127 pages.
Right.
That,
No, but
Yeah.
you made a actual comment
Oh.
and I don't know where it was. It was at the very beginning. You made a comment about one of the statements. I think it was on page 3 on either vibrant, unique, one of the outcomes.
with a
And
proud
I-
history of agricultural production.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I concur with that. So we should just make sure that makes it over. Okay. Pam's got it. Thank you.
Anybody else have any?
I just,
Go ahead.
when I was reading through this, we talk about our agricultural heritage and it's not in the program area. I don't know that I identified it, but it seems to me that we could partner with our agricultural owners out there to do something as far as economic development, as far as promoting tourism. I'm thinking,
Perfect.
demonstration area where they could see what's going on, I
Perfect.
know that when we had the sheepdog trials, it was people that came from San Francisco, Oakland, Marin County that I met with. They were very surprised at how, the whole process, the whole sheep ranching process worked and watching the dogs and all that. And a demonstration, that would be something that they found that very interesting. And that would be something that we might be able to parlay into an attraction, but working with the ranchers in Montezuma Hills.
Thank you, Art. That was perfect.
Yeah.
So that's a nice segue into something that I wanted to bring up. I didn't know whether it fit here or not, and that's why I didn't say anything. But this whole, and I've been thinking about this a lot since we live in an agricultural community, yet we don't really individually see a lot of the benefits of our agricultural community, i.e. the sheep in downtown, but then also in our food that we have. I always feel like we're in a food desert in a sense. You go to a restaurant, the tomatoes that are on your hamburger are from Mexico and they're green and not tasty. I flip them off. And I think there's a huge opportunity for our city to take some of our land potentially and have greenhouses or aquaponics operations or chicken or whatever, and a nonprofit potentially taking over that function. And that food from as an economic driver being fed back into our community, into our downtown restaurants. And I've already spoken to roughly around 20 people on this matter, from Jeannie to Rich Collins, who owns or owned California Endive, to Solano, Sustainable Solano. And so I think there is a model there. I haven't done any financials, but I think, and then that's why I was talking about the tree-lined streets. I think it all comes together if we could have, and I just wrote, this is a placeholder, but I said a route to river so that everything is always connected down to the riverfront. So you could have, my wife was looking at urban walks, for instance, where you could walk across San Francisco and you're walking through community gardens and walk into little cafes and whatnot, but we could start it up at Liberty Island. If you have tree-lined streets, you could come down and then you could go through a city-owned property that could potentially have farm to table and greenhouses and whatnot. FFA operates their little, I don't know what you call it, farmhouse. 4-H, the what? Yes, so 4-H has a little farm that's on city property and they produce obviously animals over there. Well, you could have educational programs connected with not with Riverview and DH White, where the kids could see the entire ecosystem working, where you have animals use their waste to fertilize the farms, and there's an aquaponics operation. Again, all that stuff, all that produce, all that meat, all of that stays within our community. And I think it would create, from an economic development perspective, we would become known really truly as a farm to table city.
Yeah, and I think we need to encourage our restaurants and future restaurants to do this as well, so.
Yeah, it's a shame that our restaurants, you know, there are not menu items for lamb and stuff on our local, because we have them all over. Why don't we have
Yeah.
why aren't we highlighting it at our restaurants?
And I spoke to Jeannie about that and she said, oh, I've always wanted that. I wanted to sell more lamb into our community, but then the restaurants haven't really supported that, unfortunately. But I think that if we as a city take this on and show that we're really behind this whole farm to table system, that we could actually attract a restaurant that would want to have that type of produce and food in it, maybe a white table restaurant. Again, I also believe that a lot of times people that move into our community from other communities like the Bay Area, they're expecting a different type of restaurant. And I'm not criticizing Foster's. I love a bison burger there, and I love a lot of the other restaurants as well. But there's different strokes for different folks, right? And I think that this might be one of those catalysts.
Okay.
I didn't expect to do this pitch right now. And I believe that there's actually a restaurateur here that might be onto this idea too. In fact, I'm going to give a small example. I went out with this restaurateur the other day, and we were at Michael David. And if you look at their menu at the very bottom, and because I wanted to have a burger, you look at the very bottom, it says all meat from FFA and 4-H. And it just adds to this like vision, like, wow, I'm eating food from right here. I don't know that 4-H might be from across the country, but it seems like it's local. Oh, it did. Okay.
Art made the point earlier about the
Thank you.
sheepdog trials and mentioned people coming from San Francisco. I hope they found parking.
Hey, we made sure they were parking around the old gas wells out there on the ranch.
Perfect.
The COVID, we actually, Revision had another one planned, and then there was COVID, and then the ranch manager that was her passion, and she could no longer do it, and we couldn't find anybody else.
So if there are additional comments, anyone who has written comments, very much welcome them. Taking a lot of notes. I know Nick's taken a whole lot of notes as well. Is there anything else we want to cover on economic development? I will say that, you know, Pam and I are both listening to this, and probably Pam more so than I, about how does this all fit in with the economic development strategic plan. So we'll make sure that these documents remain in sync.
I'll open up to public comment, so come on up. No, really, we need to do that. No, gotta come up, yeah.
Brian Spradling, Rio Vista resident. On the part of sourcing local sources for agriculture, actually, we did meet with a local beef producer and are working with him to produce local sourced beef that's just right outside of Rio Vista for the tap house. And so those are things that we're trying to implement and stuff, is produce, our sources coming from Solano County as much as possible, so.
Chair Stanish, City Manager Miller has her hand raised.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Christina.
Thank you. I just wanted to communicate, Paul is exactly correct, that we'll go ahead and make those changes. Any changes made that need to also correct the economic development strategic plan will be brought back to the city council.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Roxanne, do you have anything that you want to speak about?
The thing about the parking, I agree with Art that, when our city's really busy with events, what happens is people park, up in front of residences who don't have driveways. So, excuse me. So, then those people don't have places to park when they come home. So I just want you to take that into consideration. And then, as far as let's see, where was I? The online shopping, what came to mind was that, you can encourage people to do online shopping, but you kind of have to bring them along and you kind of have to show them how it works. So I was thinking maybe there could be online shopping hubs that people could, come and do their online shopping at, like kiosks or something like that. Because I'm not sure if a lot of Trilogians are familiar with online shopping. There's Instacart and all of that. I don't even know if Lear is actually a member of Instacart. I know that they do have online shopping that you can get your groceries delivered. But I think if that's going to be a plan for the city, then we have to have some type of program in place to help bring people along to know how to do that. And if we are going to have that expectation of our citizens.
Okay. Is there anybody online?
City Manager Miller has her hand raised.
Okay, we'll hear from her again.
You want her a second try?
City Manager Miller?
She's a city manager. Christina, go ahead.
Christina, you can unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I think when we're talking about online shopping, we're talking about taxable goods, so that would not be groceries.
That was just an example. I mean, I'm talking about people again.
Great.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
anything else? All right, I'll close public comment.
Fantastic input. Thank you for, the insights and the guidance. We'll be looking at this element as well as in some cases, looking at the flow of the elements overall. So we may, be looking at that kind of structural question of how the elements are arranged, the key considerations. I think we can go to the next slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about next steps. So the working group has now reviewed and provided comments on all of the elements. Now it's on staff to get these comments as well as do our final revisions. You will be getting a paper copy of the entire general plan. We'll also make it available to digital, but we want to provide you the paper as an option in a binder. And we expect to get that out in about 3 weeks, 2 weeks. We want to get that to you at least a couple of weeks before the April meeting. That'll be April 4th, where you'll be looking at the entire administrative draft general plan. That will be the first time you will see the entire plan. It's still going to be in a Microsoft Word format, so it's not going to be the pretty final version, but content-wise, it's all going to be there. Once we've had that review completed and we understand the final changes needed to get to a public release, we will be preparing a public release document to go out to the community. And we think you're probably going to want to have a community workshop of some kind. So wanted to talk to you about what does that look like? Do you have thoughts about best day of the week or format? We're probably going to want to get ideally one of the school facilities. They're, integrated within the community, people familiar with them. But what are your thoughts on how we should roll this out to the community, understanding that that will probably be the last informal review of the general plan before it heads on to planning commission adoption hearings?
Do you, oh, go ahead, Nessa.
Turnout, I remember when we had the workshops before. We had them like on a Saturday, and we had some in the evenings, had some during the day, during the week. Did we have any data on which worked the best?
I don't think we can draw conclusions because we did not enlist our superpower for turning out public, which is Pam. We used her to really push the word out, and she just has a connection with the community that I and my staff did not seem to have through our, despite putting flyers and announcements and everything, somehow it wasn't personal. Pam's able to get a little bit more buzz. So I think it would be an apples and oranges comparison because we did have. Yeah, please do, Pam.
So I remember the Saturdays that we have done for the general plan, and the turnout was was not as we had expected because of the fact that there's a lot of conflict, like the Little League and stuff. When we did the EDSP outreach, what we did was we kind of used for lack of a better term, a Paul Revere approach. So a month before the consultant landed boots and worked with us, what we did was we made an announcement that the consultant is coming. The consultant will be working with you. The consultant will be tapping into the community. And then what happened was city staff had worked with the consultant in these appearances. We've gathered the stakeholders, the ones that we know and can perceive that have a lot of influence and a lot of stake, because everybody has a stake in one way, shape, or form in the economic development of the city. And so we basically did that, and the way we branded ours is Paul and his team's efforts and our efforts are one and the same, because it goes to a goal, a common goal. And so we're continuing with that branding. And so Paul and I have talked about this, and what we're going to do is the same approach. So a month and a half before the draft gets released, we're going to get a hold of the people who we have contacted before, because it's a good place, because the EDSP just got adopted. And so I'm going to go back and say, thank you very much for the EDSP. I'm just letting you know that the partner pair with the bigger one, the mom of the group, which is the general plan, is coming out. And we would like for you to participate in this process, because these two are living, breathing documents for the city. And without you, this won't work.
Can you offer any thoughts about best days? I guess what I'm really looking for is trying to focus in on when we should have it. Should we have one or two? Those are really the questions in my mind. Do we have one or two workshops? And do we have a day that we think will be best, or days that we should avoid? May.
Mhm.
I
Towards
don't
the end of
think
May
it
would
will
not be good.
matter if they somehow get the idea that California Forever is going to be discussed, they will be there.
So don't put general plan, put California.
No, general plan and its, and its effects on California forever.
I'm-
Joking aside, I think that there will be a heightened interest because there's so much
Mhm.
interest about California
Yeah.
forever and so, but any thoughts?
So I have a thought. So if we're doing this in May, we obviously need to pick a couple dates and
Mhm.
different times. So maybe we do an RSVP program so that we know about how many people are coming, because if we only have 10 people coming, we can do it here. If we're having 100 people, then we know we need to have it at a different venue. And if we're having two different venues, then we know about the approximate size. And I don't mean that it's restricted in as far as numbers, but I think we just want to get a head count so we know how many people potentially could come.
Chair
Pam?
Stanis, may I say something? What we did before is we pretty much had talked to everybody and said, hey, this is coming. If this comes, are you going to be interested in coming? Because we have to think about the venue. And so that kind of helps us with the head count. So that's what we would do for this approach as well. As to days, what we can do also is to offer maybe a Saturday, depending on what Paul says, maybe we could offer a Saturday and then pretty much use this approach that we have done for the EDSP and the latter part of the general plan working group approach. And then the weekdays work, one in the morning and one in the evening, because in the mornings, your retirees and those who basically are self-employed who have time to devote during the day could come. And then in the evening, you capture folks who are coming from work and folks with younger families. And last time we had children come and participate in this process. So we would welcome our younger folks to come as well.
Just logistically for my team, it's a little bit challenging to come like a weekday morning and a Saturday afternoon or something. We would really prefer to try to do it on one day, if that makes sense. I don't know if during a weekday, we really would expect to get the turnout, but that, as Pam mentioned, there's a lot of folks who are retired and aren't obligated on a, workday schedule. That would be a good option.
I think you need to have a weekday option. Like Thursdays tend to be a good day for events, I think. When you do Saturday and you're talking about May, the weather's going to be beautiful. Families are not going to want to be hanging around.
So we'll
Come to
be
something like
better
this.
off doing an afternoon and an evening on a weekday.
So in May, Little League and swimming is in full swing. So Saturdays, Sundays, probably Friday nights off limits for families.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Thursday,
so weekday,
Thursday's
do an
great, yeah.
afternoon and do an evening?
yeah, Thursday. And unfortunately, it'd have to be later, like 7 o'clock when
Doesn't
you,
matter, that's fine.
or I guess 6 is fine too.
No,
It's just
maybe like
people need to
a-
be able to get back.
Well, we'll get a venue and I think we have to plan on having a good turnout. So we'll probably just go ahead and get one of the schools lined up, hopefully.
I think if you have all the shareholders, if you send out a notice to them and then have a shareable graphic that they could share on social media, I think the numbers will pick up as well.
Nick has
And
his
I
hand
think
up.
Also,
Chair
Pam
Standish?
does too.
Yeah.
City
Nick.
Manager Miller has her hand
Do
raised.
that. Well, Nick had his hand. Let's give it to Nick. He had his hand up.
Okay.
and I can't see her.
Oh, sorry.
Nick, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Just a quick note. The last time we had public workshop, we did it on a Thursday. We actually did two, one in the early afternoon and one in the evening. And that was our best turnout. We had over 100 people come that day. But again, that was Pam and, working with the community and getting a lot of the outreach happening. And the time before, I think we did well, Paul may remember Thursday and a Saturday we did, and we didn't get too much of a turnout at that time.
So I think what that tells us is Thursdays can be successful. So then it's up to us doing our job, but so how about if we look to that?
Okay.
A Thursday afternoon and a Thursday evening, we know it's worked in the past and that just puts the burden on us to get folks to turn out.
Christina, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just had a comment from previous, and it's not really all that pertinent anymore, but sales tax is not generated from groceries, and so we'd really be focusing our outreach on taxable online sales.
Okay, yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
So
I think we're focused in on a Thursday afternoon, evening, a pair of them.
are you looking, this meeting, this rollout meeting, is it going to be interactive where the public can ask questions and comment? or-
Absolutely, and that's one reason this probably isn't the best room. It's much better to be in a less formal setting. We may have breakout tables. We'll have to talk a little bit more before we get there. You know, we could break it out to the really important elements. Land use, circulation, economic development. Probably are that captures what most people are gonna be interested. So we could have tables for those. So we'll work on the format, but definitely want it to be informal so that we're not forcing people to come up and stand in front of 100 peers, and that's not comfortable.
Okay.
For some people, for some people.
Yeah, I'm concerned that it could get very long if we don't, having breakout tables might move things along more quickly. Because especially the California Forever meetings that I have been to, they go on everybody has an opinion that they want to be heard.
Pam, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that the committee is on board with what I have in mind, that I'll be working with Paul and Nick. From what I'm hearing, Thursday would be a good day, just as we worked. And the school district, I remembered, made a comment that Thursdays normally are good days too. I will check for any opportunity to see if a Saturday would work, because I am being mindful of what our superintendent had mentioned to me in one of our outreaches, where she would like to have working families, particularly those, to be involved and engaged. And normally they have Saturdays available. And I'll also reach out to our stakeholders, such as the Little League, just to make sure that there are no conflicts. Would the committee, does that sound good to the committee?
Whatever draws the most people, it doesn't matter what day to me.
Then that we will do.
Great. I think we have the guidance we need to start planning for the rollout meetings, so much appreciated. That concludes the topics we.
At what point, since we're talking about May, at what point do the changes that we've made to zoning, when will those things start to come to fruition, where the city council planning to change some of that?
Use the term zoning, was that intentional? Because that's a follow-up action after the general plan.
Yes.
So we'll get the general plan adopted, then we'll have to look at the zoning code to figure out what has to be brought into consistency. That process probably is gonna take 6 months to make sure we get it right. There'll be map changes. There may be some other changes in the types of districts. Right now, we don't have a medium density residential general plan designation. We may need to draft some new standards, things like that. And we may also take a look at the zoning code just to figure out if there's anything we're stumbling on. Because remember, we want our codes to support economic development, and so we want to get rid of the stumblers, so.
Okay, anybody else? All right, as Paul said earlier, this is the 23rd General Plan Working Group meeting. We're adjourned.
Thank you. Best laid plans. Now I have to call my daughter and tell her why I'm not on the road yet.